I think that's why too. We talked about this last week about not implementing new gear right away, and I think that's something you have to take care of the little things. Like in my case, this week I was working on the new setup, the new gear, getting it implemented, going through the little checklist things like audio delay. It's not just about getting your graphics and everything in there from shows and your other minute details, but things that could make or break your show, audio sync delay, and like you said, This episode is sponsored in part by PTZ Optics. Why need a cameraman when you can just do it yourself? Visit ptzoptics.com for more information. Hey guys, welcome to another edition of Broadcast Now, the show that talks about everything that has to do with on-air, live streaming, internet broadcasting, spending your money in places that you probably shouldn't, but you do it anyways. No, I'm just kidding. I am joined, as always, we've got here Mr. Marty McPadden from Podjam.tv.
Yeah, all about spending the money. I gotta spend some money. I gotta get more than one light, so I gotta spend some money.
Well, Greg thought you had another light, so
right? I don't know what I did. So
we've also got Mr. Greg Terry, youtube.com/the Greg Terry Experience.
Thank you there, Stephen. I really thought I had inspired Marty to upgrade after the rubber duckies on my shower curtain. I'm going to give him one more week, and I'm sending him an Amazon card to the Bath and Body store.
Oh, man. I'll never live it down.
No, sir.
And we also have a special guest with us here today from the Streaming Alchemy show, streamingalchemy.tv, Mr. John Mahoney. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. This is great.
Oh, it's great to have you on here because you are the wizard when it comes to guest broadcasts or bringing in guests. And we'll talk a little bit later about your actual product that you have with the live to air. But I kind of wanted to talk about this because I know a lot of people in the room here are always wondering, how do I get guests on? How do I do all these types of things? So we actually put together a demonstration to show how you can do it with like vMix, with Wirecast, and of course your live to air. But why don't you talk a little bit before we do that, as people are rolling in here, talk a little bit about Streaming Alchemy, what you do. I'll pull up the website and let people know how they can watch it.
Okay, well, Streaming Alchemy really started as an attempt to provide foundational knowledge for people who were interested in live streaming. So as you know, from the neural net side, we wanted to basically bring everybody's capability level a little bit higher, give them different ways to think about the tools they already had, and hopefully as those techniques became something they wanted to integrate, they'd be able to expand the things that they're doing with their productions. So Streaming Alchemy is all about sort of raising the bar, giving you different ways to think about production, different techniques and approaches, as well as a lot of foundational things from, you know, how do you deal with audio and video and lenses to things like vMix scripting, which has actually been something that's been pretty popular on the channel. So we know we have a lot of interest in that. But it's a fairly broad set of tools around streaming and video production in general.
I know we all here, we tune in and we watch the show from week in and week out. You have done a tremendous job. And I know Greg had mentioned earlier, I think it was a couple weeks ago, where you were looking at scripting, and I'm like, John did a show on it, right? And you went and checked it out.
Yes, I started digging into John, and I discovered right quick that I'm in the presence of royalty tonight when it comes to some knowledge here on dealing with remote applications and guests, and I'm really looking forward to the hour myself with John. And but as far as that scripting for vMix, which I run, it's unbelievable, some of the power it will unleash into your stream.
Absolutely. And we wanted to let you guys know too, Marty had started a group, right? That was about, that was probably like 5 years ago or something like that.
5-6 years ago now, yeah.
He called it Pro Broadcasters, and we had been keeping it afloat. We had like 300 members in there, and we wanted a place where people could go to talk about broadcasting and at a high level, but also a place where we could build community for the different shows that are out there. Well, I was talking with Marty yesterday, and I said, why don't we just rename it the Broadcast Now Community, so that way we can get the people that are in this community that watch this show or watch John's show or whatever, a place that they can come. And I know Jeff and High Def has a group like that, but you can never have too many groups, right? So one of the things we want to do is foster these relationships that we make here on Broadcast Now. So we encourage you to go over to Facebook. I believe, Marty, they could search for it by just saying Broadcast Now, right?
It's Facebook.com. However the page URL is, it's Broadcast Now, all one word, in the URL. So yeah, you should be able to find it just by Broadcast Now.
So go over there and ask to join and get in there. And one of the other things is we have a Discord channel. If you look up the Tech Buzz on Discord or get an invite, Brad, our community manager, he's here somewhere in the chat room here. He can get you guys links to these pages on Facebook as well as the Discord and get in there. There's a channel in there called Broadcast Now, so you don't have to get engaged with the gaming stuff that I also do and the outdoor stuff. You can kind of just focus in on that. But we'd encourage you. And Greg, you use Discord.
I use Discord quite extensively for multiple applications, church teams, worship groups, streaming groups. I also joined a Discord with a investment guy I follow, and of course Tech Buzz. It's actually the best. I've tried them all. Telegram, Band, just keep listing, WhatsApp. But when it comes to actually integrating and being able to facilitate a group experience together, there's nothing better than Discord. So if you guys aren't on Discord with us on Broadcast Now, make sure you hop over there and we'll get you in. Now, here's the deal, though. You will see if you're in Discord when Steven is playing Fortnite. But just ignore it. Just ignore it.
Come
He's
on
playing
now.
Fortnite.
He's just mad because he knows I'm good in it.
Oh, he's
There
a
you go.
stud.
Well, unless it's Call of Duty, then don't even talk to me about that. But but no. So we wanted to talk about this because it's about building community. You got to build community in order to have guests on a show, right? So I had mentioned back to these guys. I had mentioned even in pre-show about how when I started, how things were so archaic. I mean, to bring a guest on, just to kind of let you guys in on this, I didn't even have the bandwidth. You know, John, you were talking about bringing in 1080 with yourself and not knowing how much bandwidth. I didn't even have. I think I had 10 megs down and 1 meg up when I first started doing this. This was back. I think my highest stream was 360p, and I was doing internet radio, and I wanted to bring in guests, and so I had a built-in microphone on my laptop, and I fire up Skype, and I noticed the more I hosted, the more my bandwidth tanked. So one of my co-hosts at the time, he hosted, he had everybody call his Skype, and then he would call me so that he would take the blunt of the bandwidth, but it was just audio. Fast forward, we got into using multiple, like anytime a family member upgraded their PC, they were going to throw it out. I'm like, no, I want that. And they're like, it's an old PC. What do you want to do with it? I want to run Skype. And I would have 4 separate machines that ran Skype. I ran it to my mixer, and I would use like a cheap capture card to capture an SD capture card, and until my USB bandwidth died on one of the other machines. And usually I could run, you know, if I ran it at like 640 resolution, I was good. I could do that in a square. And so I started doing that, and everybody, you know, started doing guests around that time, Skype, everything. But things have changed now, right? John, what has been your experience? Because you actually went and created a product to do this, but what was your experience that made you go to that road?
Well, there's a couple of things that I think are important when you start to think about bringing in guests. I mean, one side is that we have a lot of different technologies available today that allow us to do this type of video acquisition. And also people in the broader community, not just in the broadcast space, have become a lot more comfortable with participating in these types of remote video calls or productions in general. So the experience that led us into this space was really the limitations of these Skype, sort of roll your own Skype solutions, where you were trying to hack Skype and Skype would be updating itself and your hacks would break right before you were trying to use it. And it was not a consistent production level solution. It was really a, put it together and pray that it worked for the show. So when we looked at this, we were really looking at taking and structuring this in a way that somebody who's used to a production environment felt comfortable. It had predictable ins and outs, predictable operation, and that you could control the changes that went in. Because, I mean, one of the cardinal rules of any production environment is never do an upgrade right before a show. And you didn't have that control when you were using Skype. They update it whenever they want, and so you'd have all sorts of things happening that were not always great. So from there, we basically built a single channel product and then quickly upgraded that to a 4-channel product. And that was really around the way we were seeing people use this. I think the power of bringing in remote participants into a production make it so that the one-to-one types of productions really cry out for that little extra. You know, when you see the power of a conversation that takes place between a group, that's where, you know, the real richness of these types of remote productions comes in. And I think that's been motivating us all along, finding out ways to sort of make that group participation easier and higher quality.
Greg, you were gonna.
Well, first thing I'm going to do is is it okay to update my system
No.
during the show?
No.
I know we can't do it before. Steven and I were laughing because, man, that's like the major protocol, and John just nailed it. But, you know, here's the thing about, you know, even the processes that John has developed with neural net or the advancement of technology. I remember years ago when I was in the early days of learning technology that I had one call where somebody called in on a camera and then I put my phone on them. This is how far we've came to try to get some audio and a little bit of video through a stream. But I think what the important thing to remember is when you are having a guest on your stream, and honestly, it doesn't matter what category you fall in. You may be a gamer in here. You may be, for me, I'm in church, worship, and news. That's what I do. Marty is in his world. John's in his world, and Steven's in his world. But of course, we come from many diverse backgrounds. But when you have a guest, if that experience now in 2021 is not to a certain level, it's going to be a turnoff to your viewers and your community, because even look what we're doing here. And of course, we got some real thoroughbreds in this world of remote guests and call-ins. But the beauty of having guests and having a system that works is this. If you have a system that works, it allows you to get better guests. You say, well, why can you get better guests if your system works? Because if you're going for higher quality guests, they're not going to do your, you know, if you do a test call in 4 hours before live, they are not going to participate with your experience if you can't even get them into your system. So a part of having a seamless operation, I think in the long run, is going to allow you to have even better quality guests. And that's vital to grow in your community.
Marty, you know, you've been with me for the long haul here doing this, and there's been a lot of developments. Before we get into John's system, there's been a lot of developments that a lot of these companies have brought out ways to incorporate guests through it. But you remember the days you were doing some shows with Google Hangouts. That was kind of like the big deal.
Yeah, when I first started doing, especially client work, this was probably back in 2000. I started probably 2013 with client work, working with my first client, doing like kind of live stream interview style type of shows. And that's exactly what we use, Stephen. We use Google Hangouts. And what I would do is I would screen capture it and do, you know, remember that product, you could switch the cameras or switch the views manually. You could let it switch automatically, and it would key on people's voices. Whoever was talking would switch the view, and that was great for a lot of people who didn't want to have to switch manually. But I would switch manually, and I would set it up where I would screen capture the Google Hangout, and then underneath I would switch back and forth, and I would hide that little panel. I would make it big and try to hide the little panel with the lower third, and it worked pretty good, you know. And that was my first foray. And then I went into where I went down the road that you went, Stephen, where I had multiple machines to try to bring in Skype individually, did the mix minus, all that stuff. And that's when I realized, oh man, this stuff is for the average person now that can do these shows, from various tools, it's unless you're like a broadcast professional or high end, there's a lot of failure points. A lot of hardware is great, but you really have to know what you're doing. A lot of failure points. Really got to know as far as like how many times have we gone through Mix Minus, Steven, as far as setting that up and all the horrors with that, right? And all the feeds and all that. And then we kind of graduated. And what I've seen as far as the trends go, and this kind of leads into what John has been doing, is I think a lot of it is, and this is when you first started the computing. You mentioned, I think in the pre-show, using a Pentium 4.
Yeah.
And that is like ancient history now. You know, that would never have the power. And we were talking 320p and all kinds of crazy stuff. Now it's like 1080p is kind of standard. You know, people are doing 4K, all kinds of stuff, even live streaming. But now I think the computing power and it's kind of the hardware is kind of caught up, where now you're seeing a lot of stuff being done in software. So like with the Skype stuff, there was little tricks where you could have multiple instances of Skype on the same machine, but then you run into all kinds of hardware limitations and issues and bandwidth and all that. But now you have the computing power where the software, you know, properly written and well written, can take care of a lot of these technical issues and make it a lot easier for people that are just beginning or want a simplified process and still want to do a show with maybe multiple guests. And that kind of brings us up to what John's been working on, and even just everything going on in the field. But yeah, it's come a long way in like 10 years. You know, it's a completely different
This is how I
now.
used to have to get away with it. I used to have to make everybody small so I could bring them in. And obviously there's better quality with this now. But even Zoom has taken over. I mean, we all use Zoom in some way, shape, or form or fashion. Some people use it in their productions. They use it as their go-to. I'm not a fan of that. I think there is a place for it. Okay. And that's what we want to kind of go through today. We want to show you guys some stuff with vMix, with Wirecast, and of course John's Live to Air, and show you why we use the Live to Air system here for Broadcast Now and all the shows that I do on the network, but also to help you understand, because OBS has something called OBS Ninja, which is a lot like vMix Call. So there's options, and I shudder to think, John, what this would have been like had I had these options. Had you had these options years ago when we started, you might not have made the Live to Air system, right? I mean, these systems are finally coming around, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of different things that are now coming to the fore, where it's a confluence of the reduced cost in hardware. So people are now starting to develop software technologies that can leverage that. And it's also, you know, in today's marketplace, there's now workflows around working with remote guests. And I think those things all have to come together before people can truly be confident. I mean, though you can say technically it's really just a remote camera and a remote mic, there are a lot of different elements that go behind integrating that in a way that's seamless, both pre-show, you know, all the tech checks and other things, but also during a show where there has to be a different cadence and there has to be a certain level of patience and interaction to be sure you're giving the other person time to finish a thought and, you know, not step on what they're saying. So it's very different things have really come together to make this all possible now.
I think that's something you learn as you get going. That's one thing we've discussed, that we have that cadence, and Greg's he's gonna show you a little bit of what he goes through to get a guest on with vMix Call here. But I do want to put it out there before we do this, as he's getting set up here. If you're interested in helping with building the community on Discord or on Facebook, hit Brad up. Let him know that he can count on you for help, and we can kind of get you guys moved into that, because this is another part of the broadcast process, right? It could be overwhelming, okay, doing this, and a lot of people see you bring on high quality guests, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is tough. I see some of these guys that are using StreamYard. Greg, you use vMix. That is your weapon of choice.
I do. It is my weapon of choice, and I've dabbled in not all of them, but I dabbled in OBS. I dabbled in the what is the other OBS? They've got a StreamYard. No,
Streamlabs.
a
Streamlabs.
yeah, Streamlabs. I looked at StreamYards. Um, did some Wirecast. All have their places. All are cool. But for me, you know, you turned me on to vMix. You turned me on to Martin and those guys out of Australia. And there's a couple of things that I would like to show because I still get to the end result of us desiring to have guests that accentuate the focus of our program. So we need the experience for our guests to be seamless. And for me, right now, vMix works great for that. vMix Call, although I'm learning neural net when I'm ever live in Steven's studio, I see how that functions. And, you know, John is just some brilliant dude. That's all I can say because neural net is amazing. But vMix Call, very satisfactory. So we get better guests. Number two, we have a seamless experience. Now on the back end, I'm gonna share my stream with you now, Steven. And so here's what I'm actually looking at right now that I'm sending Steven. Couple of things I want to draw your attention to. So let's say tonight I want to have a guest. What I'm going to do, my program's 8:30 p.m. Eastern, so I have a guest call setup time 4 to 5 hours prior to showtime. So let's just say 3:30 p.m. I am now sending my guest this, and I tell them to go to advanced.vmixcall.com, and this is what my guest sees. Now, on the back end, this is what I'm seeing. I go down into vMix, very simple. I add an input. This is how simple it is. I then basically select I want a video call, and then I send this information to my guest. They go to the website, they put in their name, and they put in this password right here. And for me, I'm typically bringing people in at a lower bandwidth to make the stream more friendly. Then they're seeing a full preview screen. They're seeing themselves. Of course, put their earbuds in. Typically, for me, having a remote guest, they're traveling or they're on the road because I'm a lot of times bringing in pastors or people talking about news commentary. I'm working on right now actually getting General Jerry Boykin into my program, who is Pentagon level. So, you know, when you do that, they don't have studios, but they've got a great iPhone or an iPad. And this works phenomenal. They pop in their password. They're instantly into my vMix, and I call it master control here on my tabs. And I'll see them. I'll see their name there. Now, for me, here's a typical program. This has got 47 inputs. So now I have the heat of the program. I'm doing 25 minutes. My guest is watching. They're listening. I'm throwing them the cue saying, okay, about 2 minutes going to be coming to my guest. Very excited to have them here. Guys, you're going to love this experience. These people are brilliant. Da-da-da-da. They're prepped. It's time for the guest to roll in. Now I'm looking down at my vMix, and of course, I'm using Stream Deck for my shortcuts, but I'm looking down and I go, oh my goodness, where are my guests? This is the beauty for me of vMix. I go to my tab here. You can see the yellow, and I've got one input on my bright yellow that says guests, and there I can control camera angles, camera views, whatever, without looking at the convoluence of inputs that are here. There's one last thing I want to say, and I'll throw it back to you, Stephen, but here's, you know, John made a very good statement, and Marty was talking about how we have transitioned from software, and we've transitioned, from hardware to software in a lot of ways. And then John was talking about the process of software and now the functionality of how hardware can make software work better. I would add to that I just showed you guys a behind-the-scenes look at my vMix. Well, I have taken a very deep, focused, concerted effort to constantly build my vMix, my layers, my folders, my file pathways on a certain system, and I never put a variation on that. Everything has its place. Every input number is always the same. And for me, I've been using vMix now for a year, I guess, or maybe 9, 10 months, quite a while. And for me, I have never had one problem. So process, that's a behind the scenes look at the guest setup. And for me, it works great. So I hope that helps you guys tonight. Take a look. If you're not using vMix, it's a really good option. And the team there in Australia is fantastic. Back to you, Stephen.
That's Al was saying that in the chat room. He was saying that vMix looks really cool, and that is also, I use that in conjunction with TriCaster, but I wanted to show Wirecast as an option, because everybody knows I used to use a lot of stuff with Wirecast, and so this is the Wirecast interface. These are our paid solutions. These are not free, but there are some trials. So right now you're seeing me with the built-in microphone, built-in camera, excuse me. But in Wirecast, it's simple as well with Rendezvous. You can click on the plus sign, go to your network, scroll down, and you'll see it says create a rendezvous session. You're going to click add, and just like vMix Call, it's going to ask you to, enable the chat for a session if you want. You can share your chat history, because obviously that's a new feature and you want to be able to do that. But you create the session, I share that link with my guest, and then I'll get a little notification here in the corner that I click on. It says, hey, Marty wants to join your broadcast. I click on it, and then what happens is it becomes a shot right here in the corner, and this is my rendezvous control, central control, I guess we'll call it mission control, right? Is that what you called it, Greg? Mission control?
Yeah, mission control.
Mission control.
Master control.
Master control.
Master
Okay.
control.
So
yes, sir.
Here you could choose what camera you want to send to your your rendezvous. If you like, in my case, if I was doing a rendezvous session right now, I could take mix one from the TriCaster and send that, which would be the output. So it's gonna send the output of the TriCaster to it. Right now it says no audio mix for rendezvous. I could choose what I want. So I want to send the TriCaster mix because I want them to hear all the audio that's coming from that. And the speaker I could set up if I'm doing, headphones. I could choose my MacBook Pro speakers, whatever I want to use for it. And then that's it. I mean, you're essentially up and running. You can bring your guest in, with a great solution that the software switching solutions have been providing. And that's, like I said to people, I was like, man, if there was a vMix when I started, or a Wirecast with Rendezvous or vMix Call, things would have been a little bit different back in the day. I wouldn't have had to cobble together Skype machines and go 360p. Well, then I started playing with Skype TX, and Skype TX, Marty, you remember we did that. It was kind of we had our quarrels, and then John here goes, I got something that you want to try. It's called Live to Air, and that's where I'm going to toss it to John, who's going to tell you about Live to Air.
All right, so first, thank you, because I think getting the sense of all the different solutions is really important, because there is no one solution that is going to work for everybody's workflow. I think one of the key things, if I just take one step back, when we looked at all these different solutions, one of the things that they all have in common is that they work with NDI. And NDI really, in so many ways, is the glue that allows us to work with best of breed for whatever it is that we're trying to produce. So with Live to Air, when we started, there wasn't, NDI wasn't there, but we were using SDI, which, while that's a great integration tool, that does have certain limitations. So once NDI came out, we added NDI to Live to Air, which allows it now to play in this ecosystem, Live to Air with vMix, Live to Air with Wirecast. All those things now can become possible. But if I just switch over to live to air as an interface, there are two components to live to air that are probably interesting. The one you're looking at right here is the live to air control interface. This is the part that is in the studio. And in this left-hand column over here, you will see all the guests that want to connect to your show. And if you have guests that are just coming in to be part of your production, that works really well. You can just give them a link. They all use the same link. So you don't need to generate individual links for each guest. When they all connect, you'll see them all individually here. And from there, you can select a guest and put them into any of 4 channels that are available in live to air to bring in guests. So in this case, I'll just connect here. I select channel 1, select the guest, and pick them up. And so now I'm seeing a preview of this guest that I have. The other thing is I also see all the details about the devices that this guest has. So this is coming in through NDI video because clearly this is a simulated, but I can see every camera and device and not only see it, but I can also change it. So a lot of the issues that we saw people having is walking a non-technical person through making some of the adjustments they would need. So we now have the ability to let an operator go and make all the changes they want to somebody else's media settings. And from there, when all that's set up, you can just click and send that person out on air and they'll connect to your production. That can go out either NDI or SDI. So it gives you a workflow sort of described in the UI of how you would go about bringing somebody in and actually putting them on air. The advantages that we have, though, that we think are really unique, and Stephen, I'm going to ask you if you would be able to switch this over to the call-in manager interface. It's really this other piece of software that is browser-based that we think is really the interesting piece. So I mentioned that everybody can come in using a single URL. When they do come in, you will see them all in that left-hand column, which says inbound at the top. From here, you can connect to the guest. You can see all their technical settings. You can know what bandwidth are they coming in at, what codecs are being used. So if you're really on the geeky side of things, you can tunnel right in and understand the quality of the connection. Like you can in the live to air interface directly in the call-in manager component, you can also change all of their audio and video settings. You have the ability then, when you're done, to add notes. So there's a little section on the side that lets you, if you look at the bottom half of the screen, which actually lets you input any type of notes. So you can pass notes around from somebody who's screening to somebody who's running live to air directly in the studio. And that could be things that this guest needs, a question they may have, or how you as a producer could integrate them into your production. They really want to talk about this, they're interested in getting an answer to that, so gives you that way to communicate sort of lightweight from beginning to end. And when you're done, you can send these guests into the studio. And when you send them into the studio, and it's really, it's just the buttons that they're all grayed out here because there are no guests waiting, but that gives you the ability to move guests around from inbound queue to send them to the studio. And then you can also track when they are assigned to a channel and when they're live on air. So you get all of that information coming back here. This interface that you're looking at is browser-based. So you can run it from any browser, anywhere. So even though in the studio, like the way Steven set up, he has his live to air system there in his studio, the person running call-in manager can be running from a completely remote location, handle all the screening. And in addition, call-in manager can be used to do sort of that pre-flight check you want to do with every guest. So this way, if you're going to talk with somebody at 6 o'clock at night, the night before, you can connect with them through your browser at 6 o'clock at night so you don't tie up any studio resources and manage to do the full tech check and get them all ready to come in for the show the next day. So it's a different model. We didn't just want to set everything up So it was really based on simply having a single control interface. We really wanted to think of it in the context of a full workflow, everything from onboarding guests to bringing them on an air. And when that, the guest is done, they'll show up back again in call-in managers. So you can actually have a producer thank them, get additional information, invite them back. So again, part of what Greg was talking about was building that community. How do you create these relationships? This is a part of that. We wanted to make sure that when somebody was in a production, they didn't feel like they were just pulled in technically, but that there was somebody holding their hand through the process. And then when the process was done, somebody to do sort of the courteous thing, say, thank you, it was great, and, we enjoyed having you. Just basic things that you would expect if you were on site. And we wanted to try to replicate that.
And John, I will pull over here so they can also see this is what the interface looks like for the person that's calling in. Obviously, I went into it here because I was trying to pull it up, but you basically fill out your information here, and you can put your name, email address, right? Hit Joel, but you can choose your camera, like your Wirecast virtual camera, or in my case, do the FaceTime camera. There it is. And then I could choose my own. So he really made it simple for somebody calling in. And then once I got my mic here, my speaker, everything, I just click join show, and it tells me I'm first in the queue. And then, John, I can go back to our input here so we can actually show it. I come up here on the side like John said. I can click connect. And this is the process that I go through during a show. So there's me showing you on the capture. Sometimes it doesn't, depending on how the capture is. And then I can click to the studio, and it sends it then over my studio, and I am able to pick it up or myself or whatever it is that I need to do. I'm just going to be really quick. But John, it's really robust to be able to. It's made for broadcasters. It's not made just to chat with your grandmother on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, it's a big piece of it is we started with the workflow. So we didn't even think about technology up front. We really were focused on how would somebody need to, in a true production environment where there's a lot going on, where whoever is working the switcher isn't necessarily going to have a half-hour pre-show onboard individual guest or do things like that. So it really very different style of development. We started first with flow and then built technology around that. So, I think that was the important piece. But, I think, a lot of things that go to bringing guests in that go way beyond the tech as well. So, it's important. The best technology isn't going to work if you don't cultivate a community of people that want to join you, that want to be a part of what it is that you're bringing to an audience. And it's really important to consider that there are lots of avenues for this. There are unis where there are people with deep expertise and who would love to basically talk about their subject. They're there in a university probably because they love it. They're corporate people that are in different areas that have maybe different perspectives from the academic perspective. So these are the types of things that you can redo directly and just start there and use that to build your community from. You really need those initial grains of sand to build the pearl sort of thing. You to build something is going to give you action to act and build not just an audience, but a community of people who can contribute to the content and add that extra value.
And one of the things, like Marty, you could go through and screen any of the callers. It gives you that ability to, where you're at, could screen anybody that comes in.
Watching John go through that, first of all, it's a very professional workflow, and it's good that he started with the workflow, because that's really half the battle, the tech fill in the rest. But I'm looking at this, and it's like this of being in a professional control room, and everyone having a specific job. And I know that John took that kind of that metaphor and brought it out into the workflow. I think a lot of the audience watching the show are probably used to. They're probably all one-man band type of operations. They're just starting out. You don't have for a lot of people, so you're used to doing everything yourself. I mean, Greg's a great example. He does everything. Steven does everything himself. I think a lot of people watch the show, use different tools. Those tools are great because they're set up to make things simple, and you can do everything yourself, switch everything around. What John has here, what I really appreciate is you can use it as a single operator where you can, it's kind of built in layers. You can use it in a very simple format where you don't really rely on the call manager, or you can do it like what Steven sets up where he's the call manager and operator at the same time, and he kind of streamlines the process. The thing I like, the thing that as you get into this, if you're doing a streaming show and you really want to all be professional and kind of a professional operation, really it's built for teams. And that's really where, doing it all that's above and beyond, and I think I have a lot of respect for people that do it all by. That's not how things are set up. Humans are meant to do one thing at a time, set up for that. And Stephen, you mentioned, and John mentioned that the call screener is based. And then what that enables you to do is you can build a team of people. You don't even have to be in the same location. I love that. When I first saw this ago, that's the thing that really blew me away, is it goes beyond what Skype would give you, that whole workflow, that whole onboarding, and John went through that, where you can have just a call screener, bring someone, you can do all the testing separate from the studio portion. And then the studio, bring them off. You have different steps along the way, and every control, and you can have multiple people manage the system where you have the call, and then you may have someone switching the show. It could be the host itself, but you separate those. This makes for a smoother show because then everyone's concentrating on one thing at a time. And the other thing, the thing is, it can be done remotely. That's the power of it too. Is like, since it's browser based, and you may have a friend, you may develop a team, and you may all be remote. Doesn't mean you can't work on the same show, and that's what product enables you to do. Is you're able to do that. I would say, obviously it's for professional workflow. I think as people watch this, they got to think a little. This is what the professional. The jobs are divided up. And I think when you look at it, it can be overwhelming, but there's a method to the madness here, and it actually works out quite. And as you get into it, and as you build up the layers, as you learn this, it's a tremendous way to go, and it's a tremendous piece. And really, the hardware now makes that possible because there's a lot going on there. In 4 different feeds on basically one box. But yeah, that separate call-in manager is the feature for me that got my attention right away.
Yeah, I mean it's been a game changer, and there's even run around that John, you build studios.
Yeah, we've done that. That's not our main business. I'll just make that clear right now. That's something that's a friends and family kind of thing. So
it'd be a hard time with that one.
But actually, if I could just show something,
yeah,
if you'd be okay.
Absolutely.
This is a very early. I want to give people. At the end of this year, we're coming out with a 6-channel version of LiveAir. And so this is just a screenshot of working on right now. This is off a development system. So it's similar general flow of the current LiveAir. This is when we were about having the new hardware ability to promote as a software. This is really what it's giving us. Things that we can do with GPU coding, things that we can do around 16 core or higher processors. So this is where we're going. But part of the thing to what Marty was mentioning before, this is going to use the call-in manager interface. So because it was designed sort of modular, you don't have a transition to say, okay, now everything changes. It's simply using all the components and building that same work into an enhanced endpoint, which can deal with more guests and flexibility for how you combine those guests.
That's exciting. That's going to be really neat. Obviously you need the bandwidth to be able to do that. Pull all those guests in, but getting that ability on a professional level as opposed to, pulling up Zoom with the headaches there. Yes, go ahead.
You caught me. I'm absolutely speechless. I'm going to say as a vMix user and vMix call that uses this weekly to bring in guests from all over the country and the world. The first thing is, after John has given his overview, his screenshots, his workflows, if this SM7B didn't cost so much, I would disconnect it and drop it right now, because that's a mic. So I'm going to take the MXL that Steven donated to my studio, drop it for John. That's a mic drop. I'm just turning my system off. I'm going downstairs and watch TV with my daughter. John, I'm blown away. I'm blown away. I quit. Done. Now, let me make two statements for serious. Number one, on which a majority of the people are in here watching. Okay. Steven and I have it up on that. And that is, if you're streamlined and you know what you're doing, you know your flow as a human, and set up with your shortcuts, your scripting, whatever, you can self-produce, moving to a much higher level, network level or whatever. I'm syndicated to Peak, and I produce it all. I'm nailing the times. I'm doing everything I have. But here's the problem for me, dealing with on the back end. So, John, can I ask you one question? Are you telling me, because I watched Steven use this in his studio, but I've never paid attention to it. Weekly for this program, I call into NeuralNet, but I know vMix call. Telling me that if I have a guest, I could produce my show for all my videos, my transitions, my tempo, my flow, but I could have my sitting beside me, chatting with my guest on the back end.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, you would be able to have any, not just sitting beside you, but if you had somebody that was in another location that was working with you. So, if you were doing a church production, you may not have everybody local, but you could do that.
Guys, I'm telling you right now, take it from a vMix. You have no clue what that means to higher level guests. I call them at 3:30 or 4 o'clock. I bring them back in at 8:15. We go live at 8. And once I'm live, even from Countdown, I can't communicate with them anymore. So it feels like I'm abandoning them, because I have to have them into the program. Let's say they're slotted to go live with me at 8:50, but they're in my program at 8:15. And sometimes I feel guilty that they're just sitting there and, they're watching, they're participating. They agreed to come on the program. They know me, etc. Not a problem. But I sure would love it if I could have somebody on that back end. Greg's got one more story, and then he's coming to you about 3 minutes out. That would change everything. So, Neural, what? I'm going to drop the mic one more time, Steven, and back to you. Unbelievable.
I already knew about this, so you could tell,
No,
he's seen it for the
okay.
first time.
Wait a
So
second.
yeah, I'm not his reaction.
I'm ready to quit.
No,
I'm done.
he
Bye.
knew about it. He just don't when he's in my studio and I'm setting everything up. He just kind of, he sits there with his phone.
Listen, I watched Steven use it. I know Steven's studio. We're basically neighbors. We live 30 minutes apart. I know the NeuralNet. Watch his screen up there. I call in each Thursday, but never did I understand the back end experience. And if you're going to grow on your stream with your community, guests are going to be a part of it. Forget it. That's it. I'm blown away. The ability to communicate on the back end, game changer. I'm done. I've got to go watch. I'm unbelievable.
For me, along with the call manager, which blew me away when the missing piece to all these different, like what Greg was going through with vMix Call. Good system, works really well, easy to use, all that stuff. But it's the guest experience. And it's funny, in my business, I do a lot of with and recording podcasts and all that stuff, and use different systems about guest experience, host experience. They're not technical. How do you smooth out that workflow for them? How do you make it really seamless, even for a producer? And that's what I like about the neural net system, is that you can add because that's, in order to do a good show, you really have a team with you. One kind of handle one show, but have infrastructure to be able to do it. And so the call manager, huge, because like what Greg saying, the on off, the behind the scenes, it just makes it for a really smooth, where they're going to want to come back on. They're going to have if they have a good experience, want to come back on, you're going to have a good relationship. And I know we talked about community, so that's very, very important. The other component of this that I find really great, especially production standpoint, is if you notice on the maze, if you have an operator, they're able to control the camera, the audio. In fact, I think you're able to control PTZ control. I'm not sure about that. But just having that control, being able to switch, I can tell you from my business and for other producers, you may have guests, again, technical, how they have to switch their camera and their mic, and you try to talk it, and it's like, you spend like an hour trying. If you can just go in there, let me go in there, make the changes, great, and they're happy. And so from a professional production standpoint, and making sure that a production has the control, you don't see that with any other system. And that's, to me, those systems there, it's really set up for the professional level. With that said, if you're just starting out, you can use it simply, which is great, but it has the robustness to be able to grow with it. Look at it like Photoshop. You can get into it and do some simple things with it, but it's an incredibly robust application. You can grow with it, and that's what I see with is like you can grow with it, and you won't outgrow it, in other words. But yeah, those two features to me are gold. I don't see it any other way. And also just be able to do it all in software on a robust hardware, that is fantastic.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. There's a lot of people here, so I mean, I get to be the face of it, but there's a lot of smart people here that some of this happens. So that's I'm going to share that sense, because that's very much appreciated from here.
Well, I think what's really cool is for the program tonight, you were able to see Even, who is a longtime user. You're here with the face of Neural Net and the team, and you hear from an industry standard guy, Marty, who is explaining, who knows Neural Net. But then you've got me, vMix, Strips, OBS, and then John unboxes. And honestly, I'm speechless. So I'm giving you the perspective tonight. We've already had folks saw the back end of vMix. It's phenomenal. Please don't get me wrong. Trying to build a program where guests are going to be reoccurring, and you need to have that next level. Quite impressed. Thank you for sharing tonight, John.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate that.
One other comment: the difference between like vMix is like a Swiss Army knife. It's so much with it. It's got everything built in. But this is the difference between like a general tool or a toolbox of different general tools, and selecting specifically for a specific task. And this is where neural nets in play, where it's got a specific mission, and it does it really well. It's on multiple levels, and you can grow with it. So that's, as you get into this, we'll get into live streaming as they want to push their productions. You're going to find that get into getting specific tools, and you're going to appreciate it, and you're going to know how to use it. But that's a good of at the higher levels, a specific tool for specific tasks, doing it very, very well. So
it's kind of like that Home Depot or Lowe's to pick up some wood screws to do some work at your house, and you come home and you get the screw out and you drill with your bit and you go to do it. Oh no, our bit, and force it with the Phillips head for sure. But man, if you've got the star and you pop it in there, it's seamless.
Are you speaking experience on that one? I'm just
I am a master of the star bit. I'm a master of the mic drop, and I'm a master of. I'm just blown away. You know what? Can I do this,
Sure.
John? This is for you.
So I guess we're going to have to get sound effects as on the feature at some point. So
Oh, Greg is the master of sound effects. He's got them ready, ripping and roaring there. John, it was a privilege to have you today. I really appreciate it. If you guys want to check it out, make sure you check out every Friday. It's at 2 p.m.
it's 2 p.m. on Fridays Eastern Time.
Streaming Alchemy. Check it out, streamingalchemy.tv, and also on Facebook, Streaming Alchemy, and you can watch Take You Master Program, all the really cool things in live video if you want to excel and move on. And also, if you want to take live of the neural net, you can go to neuralnet.com. I showed it earlier, and that's neuralnet, URAL, net.com. Really appreciate you on here today. And also, the Clown Prince of Crime. No, I'm just Mr. Greg Terry. YouTube.com/Greg Terry Experience.
First of all, Stephen, once again, John, thank you for being here. It was nice to get to know you tonight on the program, and really appreciate all the work. But, I want to give a big shout out. Marty, as always, I love working with you. Marty, I know you're probably going to say something as well. We've got the chemistry. Stephen, you did a great job this week in doing a lot of updates, countdowns. Marty, your work there, getting the Broadcast Now group updated behind the scenes that are really working to take this to the next level. So, Stephen, even going to good night. Thank you, buddy.
And you have a show tomorrow.
It's
a lot of work.
I have a show tomorrow night, 30 p.m. live Facebook, YouTube, and Integrity Television, 8:30 to 9. Current events, news, perspective, guests, all kind of stuff.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Awesome. I really appreciate it. And also, Mr. Marty McPadden, PodJam TV is the place to be if you're looking for podcast production, video production, editing. You're looking for that new sizzle reel, or maybe you want an intro like today for the show. Get in touch with Marty. He can get you all squared away.
Yeah, I want another vote for John Mahoney's Streaming Alchemy. If you're not part of that group, and if you haven't caught the show and you're in streaming or anything, he's one of those knowledgeable and his show puts a lot of effort into it. And definitely, if you can't watch live at 2 p.m. on Fridays, 2 p.m. on Fridays, right? Okay. Catch it on the replay if your time. It's chock full. If you want to learn, you got to watch it. So yeah, I definitely want to double plug that.
You got as research, guys. I mean, I pick up the magazines, I read the magazines, and there's, as good as you can be, there's always somebody that knows more than you or been in the industry longer from each other. And John will tell you there's times I've called him up. John, Esther's doing this, doing that, and well, let's take a look. That's the type of guy he is, and so you guys really need to check out the show and production. If you like high-end production, definitely check it out, guys. We will be back for the Retro Buzz at I can't even remember the time on my own show. Eastern.
And Stephen,
There's a hiccup
just before
for you.
you sign off, I feel guilty, and I'm sorry. I gave John one, and I gave you. You know, Marty's really got that shower curtain lit up well. Here's one for you, buddy.
Awesome. So everybody
See, now,
gets to
now my
choose.
night's complete.
Exactly.
Well, we really appreciate you in. I noticed Brad had told me that there was a little bit of weird audio on every platform, so I'm thinking it's something with the encoder. Maybe it just needs to be connected. It could be switchboard. Either way, it's recorded. Really appreciate everybody sticking hanging out. Tomorrow, we have a pioneer on the Retro Buzz that actually got me started in a sense. I watched his live stream when I first started, and he was just sitting there live casting. This geek that I know, Mr. Chris Perillo, will be joining us tomorrow night for Buzz. Big Star Wars fan, so you guys that Glenn gets, interesting converse, the three of us. So make sure you guys tune in. We're going to have a lot. Really appreciate it, and see you next week with podcasts now. Next time, keep it buzzing.